Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Road to Grandmaster series. In this series, I am taking you through the behind the scenes of what it takes to become a chess Grandmaster. And in this episode, unfortunately, we have to say goodbye. We've got to say goodbye to my longtime friend. We've got to say goodbye to somebody who has stood next to me for 13 years, who came to me in the darkest times of my teenage years and saved me from quitting chess. And that is the Caro-Kann defense. If you know anything about me, you know I love the Caro-Kann. I've beaten some of the world's best players with the Caro-Kann. I'm a pretty good Caro-Kann player. But I added a new opening to my toolbox, and now I feel indestructible. And not only did I add a new opening to my toolbox, I just played this opening for the first time in a classical chess tournament against the second highest rated player I have played this entire year. And I played at 99% accuracy. I'm happy as a pig in mud, or as a pig sitting in a living room couch, reading a book. I don't know what pigs do nowadays. I'm going to show you this game. I'm very proud of this game. I'm very happy about this game. And I'll give you a little bit more lore about my opponent. Friendly reminder, GothamChess chessboard is in the Walmarts, restocking by November 19th. Those of you asking for it to become an international thing, that will probably happen in 2025 at the earliest. And Chess League 2.0 dropped December 13th. That's all. I am the sponsor of all my videos moving forward. All right? That's just a little thing for you there. Okay. Now, keep in mind, I joined this tournament a day before it was, starting. I wasn't supposed to be playing at all. I'm substituting in for somebody in this tournament who had to leave due to an emergency. And the tournament happened to be in New York, so I decided, all right, look, I'll go make the trek. And in this game, I'm playing against somebody named Ishikjan. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I mean, if I want to pronounce it as an American, I would say Ishik-Can. That's not how you pronounce Turkish names. I do believe it's Ishik. Young guy, he's 19. He's studying in America now. He has 2 Grandmaster norms. He has the Grandmaster rating. Very strong player. And I was ready, I saw he was an E4 player, and I was just so excited to test this out. He didn't spend 5 minutes on the first move. He arrived a little bit late, and I played for the first time. I mean, maybe like once in 2007, I played this, because back in the day, I used to play a little bit of Accelerated Dragon. But I mean, as a serious, strong title player, I have never played this in my life. And I decided, you know what? Caro-Kann was fun, but I feel like I need openings that are a little harder to prepare against. The Sicilian is not an opening that you can really prepare against. You find new territory all the time. And I've been thinking about learning it for a while, but I decided, to make the leap. My opponent played knight f3. There are obviously other things that he could play, and now I played knight c6. And here, basically, you need to prepare the Rossalimo, and you need to prepare the open Sicilian with d4. Rossalimo is one of the most fascinating openings that exists right now. It's played constantly at the top level. Black can play a million things. G6, D6, knight F6, queen C7. I mean, so many things. But he played D4, and I showed you now what Sicilian I am trying to play. If you start with knight C6, you could be playing E6, but that wouldn't really make sense, because then you would start with E6 because you don't show your cards. You could also play knight F6 and D6, which is known as the classical Sicilian. But I played E5. I love this Sicilian. Also, it has a cool name. It's called the Kalashnikov Sicilian. The Kalashnikov. And who knows, the more I play it, the more I might give you, some courses on it, because that's the way we do things around here. Now, there will certainly be Sicilian courses, by the way, on Chess League 2.0. Chess League 2.0, it's my educational platform, will drop with, close to 60 courses, and we're going to be adding more and more on openings, middle games, end games, etc. Anyway, the point of the Kalashnikov Sicilian is that you force the knight to make a decision right away. The best thing for white to do is to try to gallop in here. That's what my opponent does, and now I play d6. And this is slightly different from the Sveshnikov Sicilian. In the Sveshnikov Sicilian, after knight takes d4, you have knight f6, knight c3, and then e5, knight b5, and now d6. And in the thing that we have in the game, my opponent went knight c3. Another line here that's very popular is c4. He went knight c3. Now if I play knight f6, it's a pure Sveshnikov, but I don't have to do that. I just play a6, knight a3, and now I can play a different move. Like, I don't have to go here. The interesting thing about this structure, right, is the fact that my d5 square is super weak. So what I try to do in this position is I try to secure the d5 square. If I can play d5, my position is a massive success because white is going to spend a bunch of time galloping with this knight around the board. You're going to see the knight make 2 more moves trying to secure this square. And at this point, black has several setups, and the setup that I chose in this game is to play bishop e6. It's not the most common move. It's more trendy than the immediate b5. I don't like b5. I feel like it's a little bit of an overcommitment to try to restrict the white knight. And so I played bishop e6. My opponent brought the knight to the game, and here I played this very mysterious move, rook to b8. Rook to b8 is really simply just a waiting move. And the point is that you don't rush with b5. So if white goes knight to e3, you never committed the pawn to the b5 square, which is actually kind of nice for you. And you know, you didn't commit anything too quickly. Excuse me, too quickly. For example, if you play knight if you play knight f6 in this position, it's also okay. But after bishop g5, you know, white can get very quick pressure on your position. For example, bishop e7, bishop takes f6, and now you can't take, right? So the thing is, rook b8 is a flexible move, waiting for white to commit one of these pieces to one of these squares, or waiting for white to play a4. And a4 is really interesting because now I can play knight b4. There's no a3, and the d5 square is being fought for from a different angle. And that's sort of what I went for. I couldn't remember here if I was supposed to play knight f6 or knight b4. I think they're both fine. I went knight f6. He pinned me, which makes sense. And, you know, he's developing his bishop, and he wants to potentially move his knight here. And now I play this move, knight b4. Now, I'm already out of book. Like, I don't exactly remember what I'm supposed to do here, but I do kind of understand the ideas. I never played b5. He overcommitted a4, so now I can't play b5, but now I get my knight to b4. He played knight e3. And here, you know, I was thinking just to play bishop e7 and then to castle. But I was thinking, you know, why don't I not commit my bishop yet? And instead, I put the rook on the c file. So I'm spending an extra move moving the rook, but obviously, you know, I'm not playing b5 anymore. Now I have very nice control here. I thought the position was quite nice. And on the next couple of moves, I will go here. I mean, to be honest, I probably could have played this move instantly. But I was kind of like hesitating, thinking, well, he could play bishop c4. And then, you know, if I trade too many pieces, d5 just becomes very weak. I also was thinking, like, should I go for this kind of a structure? And yeah, the computer actually doesn't mind it. But I just played rook c8, okay? And here he spent a long time. He spent 19 minutes. And I was, I didn't quite understand why. I was thinking he could play a5 and go for rook a4, but I thought that was a little bit ridiculous. For example, bishop e7, I was thinking take, and something like rook a4, but I was like, how's he going to defend this pawn? Well, the answer is he's not going to defend this pawn. Apparently, this pawn is worth giving away. Because if knight takes a5, he can take. I can't take with the queen because I needed to defend my knight. And now he'll play something like this, and he's almost better, despite me being just up a full pawn. Like knight back to c6, white just has an advantage. That's kind of crazy, but that's, you know, that's really fascinating. But he played queen d2, and this move was actually pretty annoying. This move made me regret not playing bishop e7, because then queen d2 wouldn't have made any sense, because I would have just castled. Let me explain what queen d2 is trying to do. All of a sudden, my knight is in a precarious situation. The knight was trying to help me go d5. The knight was trying to help me trade here. Suddenly, I don't have time to develop my pieces. He's threatening knight b5. Basically, he's threatening knight b5 because he's going to attack my knight, and he's going to attack my pawn. I don't have a useful move here. It's kind of crazy. Like, if I back up, well, then he just goes here, I take, and then he just, you know, does this, and then he does, like, you know, c3, and he got the d5 square. He got the d5 square, and now I'm going to be a little bit worse. If I play bishop e7, what his idea here was, is to take my knight and do this. And suddenly, d6 is hanging, and my knight is hanging, and if I take the knight, he's going to take my knight, and he's threatening to go here, and I was really annoyed by this move, you know? I was annoyed, but I was held up by the fact that in the Sicilian defense, the position is always dynamic. Like, it's never true. It's never over. I mean, it's not like you blundered anything. And you know, I basically had to sit here, and I spent almost the same amount of time as he did, had to kind of convince myself that this was fine. I'm a generally pessimistic person when it comes to my chess. You know, I'm working on it, but that's just how it goes. Suddenly I'm like, oh my god, take. Knight can go to b5, I can take. He's gonna take my knight. Also, if knight b5, I don't have to take. I can sack my knight on the c2 square. He's got to take. It's a good move because it deflects his knight away from the center of the board. I take on b5. He takes with check. Do I trade the bishop? Do I play king e7, king f8? I'm calculating all these different lines. I decide to go for it, and I decide to play bishop to e7. He takes. I takes. He goes here. He's threatening knight d6. He's threatening my knight. Now I have two options. Number one, I can take the knight right now. Number two, I can sack my knight for the pawn. That's called a desperado because I'm going to lose my knight anyway. So I deflect his knight. Then I go here. He's going to take with check because, you know, time is important in chess. Him developing a bishop, checking me, and preparing castling is probably what he's going to do. And I basically had to calculate. Now here I also calculated this very interesting line. I take his knight. He cannot take with check with his bishop because I come back. So he would go here. And then here I was like, if I take, I feel like I'm going to lose both pawns, so that's probably not good. I actually wanted to castle and just basically say, dude, take my pawn. And now, who's going to protect the knight and this pawn? But I didn't go for this because I was thinking, yo, this is kind of ridiculous, but like, what if he castles long? And I'm just a pawn down. I mean, I didn't see what I was supposed to do here. Now the computer finds this. But then I was like, but this is always weak. So I thought about it. I ended up sacrificing my knight on c2, right? Because look, my logic was I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna deflect his knight away from the center. That must be smart. Now I go here, he goes here. And here, again, I spent 10 minutes because my first intention when I saw this was move the king forward. I know the king goes forward onto e7 in many Sicilian positions. I just have that knowledge in my head, you know, like from watching Kasparov games or something, and this is kind of like how, you know, the king on e7 and I'm trying to go here. But then, you know, part of me was like, I actually think f8 might be better. It feels slow because I want to go here and then here. What I couldn't fully understand about the position is he wants d5, right? Let's say I go g6. Let's say he castles. Let's say I go king g7. Let's say he goes rook d1. Let's say I go here. I didn't understand if this was good for me or bad. For example, if I take and he gets this, I figured that the opposite colored bishops benefited the party that was more active. He is the party that is more active, right? So I was like, that doesn't really make sense. So then I thought, well, if the knight goes here, what if I just move the bishop away? Yeah, but then he goes here. And you know, he has what's called a queenside majority. So in every endgame, he's gonna have an outside pass pawn. I have the bishop pair, but I wasn't fully grasping, you know. And also I was like, if I trade this bishop, if I trade the bishop, it just feels like I'm gonna suffer. Like, he's gonna put the knight on d5. Okay, whatever. I mean, he can go knight e3. Doesn't really matter. Maybe he's gonna go queen d3, knight e3. But I was like, if he gets the knight to d5, bro, I'm cooked. I am never getting rid of the knight. So I was like, you know what? I don't think it makes sense to trade the bishop. Let's go here, and I'm trying to play for d5. And what's important about this position is that if he stops me from playing the d5 move, my idea was queen b6, castles, and queen d4. And this was very important because if I can trade the queens and begin opening up my bishops, you know, I didn't know if this was good for me. It looks like my king is a little bit weak, but I think I'm fine. Honestly, like, I think my king is surprisingly safe. And what's going to make this position a draw in the long run is the opposite colored bishops. Like the nature of the position is a bit drawish due to the bishops. And I thought rook a3 was a potentially interesting move, but I don't think it ever really works. So, you know, knight b4 is what I was looking at. My intention was going to be to play here. I didn't know what he was going to do here. Like, maybe he would castle. I would play queen d4, take. I looked at f4, but it felt like I should always be okay. It felt like I should play bishop c4, and like even here, running my king to the middle, I'm actually safe. Like I saw king e6, I even saw king e5, and I'm totally safe, believe it or not. Like my king is actually surprisingly resilient. So he went here. He spent a long time, and you know, I sat there and was like, wait, he's letting me go d5. I have the bishops, and my only weakness is the d pawn, and the d5 square is, you know, it looks crazy to put your king in the middle of the board and open it up, but I'm like, I like this. And I calculated pawn takes, queen takes, right? This position is just great for me. I mean, I have two bishops, And, you know, in the endgame, a king in the center is better than a king on the side. So that can't possibly work. I looked at rook d1, but the problem with rook d1 is I get my pawn to d4. This is a massive improvement for me. Here I was calculating a5, and what I wanted to respond to a5 with was g5, locking down the f4 move and running my king away. g5 is not the best move, so I would have maybe had to figure out something else, but obviously he's trying to attack me here. But yeah, there's like rook d1, there's like, for example, knight e3. I can't take because of queen before check, but I mean, it's a very, very fascinating position. But he played queen before check, and I blocked. And then here is where I spent 20 minutes and got very, very annoyed, okay? I saw that this was gonna happen, right? I calculated this. Another way that this could happen is if instead of taking here, he took here, but then in this position, I wasn't going to take this because I didn't want my king in the center. What I was going to do here is I was going to take his knight, he would take, and then I would take. And this is just a draw. This is a draw because I have a very active rook. Again, at the end of the day, we have opposite colored bishops. I have, you know, I solved all my problems. I don't have a weakness. My king is in the center, but he's not weak. So yeah, life is good here. But by changing the move order on me, which I looked at this, but I was like, it doesn't make any difference. I'm going to take the knight, he's going to take my queen, and we're going to get to the exact same position. What I had overlooked is that after he goes here, and I take the knight for free, I mean, in my mind, I was just like, well, he has to take my queen, right? Like, I took his knight, he's down a knight, and his queen is hanging. Not true. And so I was very annoyed here, because I realized not everything is as it seems. I slightly miscalculated. So I spent a long time because I wanted to go bishop d5. But this also doesn't work. I mean, his knight is hanging and his queen's hanging. He has to do something, right? No, he can go here. He can leave his queen hanging because knight d5 is a fork. When I saw this and he can go here, I got very annoyed because this is an unpleasant position. He keeps all the pieces on the board and my king is still exposed. And he's going to put both rooks in the center. I didn't like this very much. I really didn't. So I calculated queen before knight before, and yes, he's protected, but I have bishop f5. And the point of this is that if he plays rook c1, I put my king on d6, and I was like, I'm down a pawn, but my intuition is screaming that this is fine for black. And as you see, yeah, the intuition is right. Now, the funny thing is about this position, after bishop f5, white is much better, but for a very counterintuitive reason. He's up a pawn, right? Well, the only way to be better is to give it away. Because that way I don't get a blockade. He has an initiative coming and his knight follows into my position. I had a feeling d6 for him was going to be very strong. But I didn't I mean, to be honest with you, I blundered something really funny. Like, here I thought I could run my king forward. I didn't play this because, I wouldn't have done this. I would have probably went back. But this is a little bit too much. Now, if I can make a blockade, it actually is very instructive how, despite being a full pawn down, black is totally fine because black is going to go e4, bishop g5. I have a lot of activity. Like, he has an extra pawn, but my king is on a perfect square where it can't be targeted by any piece at all, right? So I found that pretty instructive. But ultimately, I calculated and I played the best moves. I played the best moves, and I'm very happy. I went back to this, taking the knight. You might be sitting there wondering, so what is wrong with this move? What's wrong with this move is this. He gets the queen away from my queen. He doesn't have to take my queen. His queen attacks my rook, and the bishop is still hanging. So my first plan here was go back to c7. This is simply bad, because after pawn takes and queen takes, material is equal, but he is completely winning. Like, my position is horrendous. My king is weak, my bishop is terrible. This was one of the things that crossed my mind, but then I realized... And another thing that crossed my mind was I can take a pawn, but after take, this is also very bad because I'm obviously losing the b7 pawn. So that doesn't work. Okay. So, the only thing that does work is giving up my bishop, but preserving the blockade. The pawn here is actually a liability for white. It's blocking his attack. So by giving away my bishop, right? Now he has to take, and now I have time to win back one of the pawns. This was a very nice, inclusion, and I was happy I saw it, but I was really, really annoyed I spent so long. I think I got a little bit deer in the headlights. It happens to me. I was like, the position's clear, clarifying. Now it's only one-on-one, so there's no endgame prospects. But I was very worried here about rook c1 and rook c8, trying to trade my rook, infiltrate with the queen, and that looked very terrifying. Like here, h5, rook c8, or even, hello, my rook is actually offside now and queen c7 is coming. So I was very concerned about rook c1, and the computer is showing it is the best move. What I would have had to done after rook c1 is I would have gone here. My plan was to play rook d8. He cannot take my pawn because I trap his queen. But this felt a little dangerous for me. It's equal always, but it felt a little bit dangerous, and I just wasn't convinced. But then he went here. And again, we have about equal time. I've managed my time quite well. I quickly kicked his queen out here because I need to kick his queen out. He went back to h3, and his idea is obviously he's trying to play f4. He has the two rooks. He's ready to play f4. My king is in the center of the board, right? Very scary. If I take, for example, my idea was to take on d5, but then rook d1. And actually, sorry. There's just the fork. So I can't do that. So I wanted to play rook d8. He would maybe play f4. I was thinking here to give him a check, but this is not a good move. Because, for example, king h1, here, fe5, rook e5, queen d7. Look at this. And that's actually not even the best move. He has other ways to win. So it felt a bit dangerous, with f4 coming. And then I was like, well, my rook is not, it looks active. They say rook's on the second rank, but this is not an endgame, so I'm going to come back and fight for the critical fourth rank squares. Now if he plays f4, I'm going to go e4. Now I'm also threatening, for example, let's just say here, I'm going to go bishop d4 check, king h1, and even f5. And I'm going to get this massive pawn wall, and actually, I think I'm playing for a win now, because my pawn is promoting. So when I played rook b4, I thought this was just a smart defensive move. And, okay, let's proceed. And here, to my shock, my opponent played rook d1. And as you see there, well, I guess you can't see it, but I can see it. It's cut off on your screen. He played rook d1, and he offered a draw. And I accepted without even hesitating. I'm like a 2508, player. Like, of course, I'm gonna take the draw. I mean, it's just the practical decision. Now, it's not a must-win game by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm gonna follow, the philosophy here of I don't need to be a hero. I don't need to play every single game to the death. I'm happy to sub in for I played the first time in my life, the Kalashnikov Sicilian. First time I played Sicilian ever, against the second highest rated player I've played the entire year. I played Ilya Nizhnik in the previous round, 25-60, but, it was hardly a game. I played Tomas Sosa in Spain. For those of you that have been following Road to GM, he was 25-35. Ishik is a 25-08. I mean, it's and young guy, very good. I was like, yeah, of course. I'm not gonna, of course I can play h5, I can keep the game going. I was watching, for example, Hikaru was super critical of taking the draw because he's freaking 2,800, okay? Hikaru would beat Ishik from this position 9 games out of 10. And one game, Hikaru would, I don't know, fall asleep at the board and draw. But for me, this was a totally natural decision, okay? I'm not gonna play a hero in every single game that I play. I was very happy. I thought I played this game super well. I got a 99% accuracy this game. I was a little bit annoyed. I spent so much time here because I just couldn't trust my calculations. But ultimately I trusted them and they paid off. And I spoke to Ishik a little bit after the game. Very nice guy. Even he was it's really cool for me because of imposter syndrome. It's really cool for me to talk to strong chess players, and Ishik was telling me so many people in Turkey, watch chess, know about GothamChess, play chess. He's got friends. His brother is a Gotham fan, so shout out to Ishik's brother. He didn't actually tell me your name, but and that was super cool. And Ishik was telling me he has 2 GM norms and you need 3, and he has 2,500 rating. So Ishik has failed to get his last GM norm 7 or 8 times. That's what he told me. And I gotta tell you, that's kind of inspiring. people don't collapse on their dreams and get dejected, and he's obviously going to be a GM, not in this tournament, but in the next one or the one after that. Like, obviously a very good player, and I was just happy to have played a really nice game against a good player for the first time in my life playing an opening. I was ecstatic. Now, does this mean I'm quitting the Caro-Kann? No, but oh man, it feels so nice to be playing new, unique, dynamic positions. It's like such an appreciation for the game. And it is, it's nice. When I play 2500s, I play pretty well. Like, I play up to their level. And one more thing, I didn't get low on time. I managed my time very well. The biggest time disadvantage was here, when I got really annoyed at myself. Yeah, it was just a nice game against a pleasant dude. And I'm happy. I'm very happy with this game. And if I needed a win because first place was on the line, yeah, I would have had to play, but I'm more than happy to kind of rest, relax. Wasn't supposed to be playing this tournament. Also, I have a cold, so I'm good. I'm very happy, and back to the lab. Gonna analyze this game, gonna try to understand a little bit more about this opening. And that's all. Road to GM continues, and the final recap will come out with my thoughts. Get out of here.